Welcome, everyone. We will begin shortly once everyone joins from the waiting room.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you to today's webinar, Track or Trudge, the 10 key data points to monitor in your independent school fundraising program. My name is Liz Farr, and I am delighted to lead the Independent Schools Practice at Huron GG+A. To give you some quick background about our firm, Huron GG+A started back in 1961 as Grenzebach, Gleer and Associates, GG+A. And our very first client was an independent school. 6 decades later, and after being acquired by Huron Consulting Group in 2024, we work with about 50 independent school clients per year of all types, sizes, and geographic locations, mostly but not exclusively in the United States. Our independent schools practice is a team of expert consultants, each of whom worked in at least 3 independent school fundraising programs. This is our secret sauce. We know firsthand what it's like to cultivate, solicit, and steward independent school donors, and monitor the occasional drop-off line or chaperone a weekend mall trip. We've also done those. But our experience in schools isn't everything. As individuals and as a firm, we are extremely data-driven, which is why data plays a significant role in any client partnership we forge. We also recognize that sometimes data can be overwhelming or even a bit intimidating. And what we hope to accomplish today is to help you focus on the key metrics we see as the most important to help guide a successful independent school fundraising program. With that, I'd like to introduce my colleagues who are independent school alumni and parents, in addition to being former fundraisers in schools. Mark Imany worked in schools for 35 years and held fundraising roles at Phillips Exeter Academy, Tabor Academy, which is also his alma mater, and most recently at Wilbraham and Monson Academy. He is also a 6-time faculty member of the CASE SAI School Advancement Institute. Mark's current and recent clients include Holderness School, Trinity Pauling School, and Wichita Collegiate School. Next, Lindsay Field spent 17 years in independent school fundraising, including time at Providence Day School, the Fletcher School, and Gaston Day School. Lindsay also served as chair of the CASE District 3 Cabinet from 2021 to 2023, and she is a CASE laureate. Her current and recent clients include Episcopal School of Baton Rouge, the John Cooper School, and St. Andrew's School in Delaware. Leslie Hutchins has 3 decades of experience in university and independent school advancement, the latter for 20 years. She held fundraising roles at the Haverford School, Sidwell Friends School, the Madeira School, and Flint Hill School. Leslie is both a CASE laureate and a recipient of the CASE Crystal Apple Award for Teaching Excellence. Her current and recent clients include Montclair Kimberly Academy, Pembroke Hill School, and St. Mary's Hall. Finally, Christy Moog spent more than 10 years in independent school fundraising offices, including at her alma mater, the Shipley School, then Maryville Preparatory School, and most recently the St. Paul Schools in Baltimore, where she led, wait for it, the integration of 2 Razor's Edge databases into a single Razor's Edge system. We love you, though, Christy. Christy's current and recent clients include Green Hill School, the Rivers School, and St. Albans. I know you are going to enjoy getting to know my colleagues and benefiting from their wisdom, their experience, their expertise. One housekeeping item before we get going on our top 10 here. If you have a question, please enter it by using the Q&A button. We are going to do our best to save time for answering some questions at the end of the webinar. But if we don't, we urge you to follow up with us via email if you have a specific question for one or all of us, and we will share our contact information at the conclusion of our webinar. With that, let's get this data party started. So cold, hard cash in the door, it's what your CFO cares most about, and so should you. So Lindsay Field is going to talk about the importance of tracking funds received.
Thanks so much, Liz. This has been a really fun exercise for our team, and it's been very hard to just narrow down 10 data points for you all, but happy to have this conversation today. When we look overall at our fundraising programs and outcomes, there are two very important reporting mechanisms to track your fundraising success. They're funds received and new funds committed. The image on your screen is from the recent Case Insights on Philanthropy and Independent Schools report, and it visually illustrates these two lenses on philanthropy. Let's start with funds received, and then later in the webinar, we'll discuss the importance of new funds committed. So how do we define funds received? Fortunately, we now have clear guidance from CASE and VSE on this definition, but in short, these are today's resources to deliver programs. Funds received should be considered cash in the door. That includes new outright gifts made during the fiscal year, plus pledge payments, event income, non-governmental grants, and realized bequests. So why does it matter for you and your school? From an internal planning perspective, we can gauge where we've been successful and where we might need to course correct in our fundraising efforts. From a budgeting perspective, it allows us to understand what the school has available to develop programmatic investment and deliver mission via philanthropy. Parents, alumni, and trustees expect clear reporting from us. So understanding where dollars are coming from also allows us to educate the community on the role philanthropy is playing in the financial model of our schools. From a stewardship and cultivation standpoint, understanding these numbers can help illustrate the impact of giving to donors who've invested. And it ensures donors are thanked and recognized appropriately for the support they've given in the current fiscal year. Ideally, tracking this from year to year so you have apples to apples will allow you to observe longitudinal data and trends. Those can inform your long-term strategic planning, not just for fundraising, but the school at large. The good news for those of you who are already participating in Dazzle entry, this is now the reporting standard you'll be using each year.
Thank you, Lindsay. For those in our audience who heard Lindsay reference the Case Insights on Philanthropy and Independent Schools report, which is down here in the footnote of this slide, that report, you can find the 2024 report, which was just released on CASE's website. And in this webinar, you're going to hear other members of the team referencing that same report. And it is chock full of great data about philanthropy and independent schools, and we highly recommend that you look it up and download it. Next, I'm going to turn things over to Christy Moog to discuss the importance of monitoring yield rates. Whether in annual giving appeals or major gift proposals, we hope that you are using personalized and specific ask amounts in your fundraising program, which is not only best practice, but also a key driver of increased fundraising revenue. And you won't be able to track or measure yield rates if you aren't asking prospects for specific amounts. So take it away, Christy.
Thank you, Liz. Within independent schools, a portfolio represents the set of prospects managed by a gift officer with the goal to strengthen engagement and ultimately secure major gifts. So how do you measure that success? As Liz mentioned, one key metric is the yield rate, the percentage of asked dollars that are actually secured or funded. Tracking yield is similar to evaluating the ask amounts for the annual fund, and it requires thoughtful assessment of several factors, including previous giving history to your school, inclination to make a major gift, financial capacity, including wealth indicators, and of course, philanthropic behavior. Have they given to other organizations? And if so, how much and to what purpose? By comparing ask amounts, and please note that I did not say expected amounts, to the actual amounts funded, you can calculate the yield. This metric helps teams forecast campaign performance, evaluate strategy, and also refine donor engagement. At Huron, GG+A, we typically see the aggregate value of yield rates between 55 and 65%, depending on the strength of the pipeline and the quality of donor relationships. But most importantly, making the ask and not just expecting it. So please remember this: many things are lost for the want of asking.
Thank you, Christy. And Christy just highlighted a yield rate range of 55 to 65% that we see most frequently among our clients. If your yield rate is lower than that, it's possible that you are being too ambitious with your ask amounts, or that you're asking too soon before your prospects are sufficiently cultivated. On the other end, if you're seeing yield rates that are higher than that, you could benefit from more courageous ask amounts to help your prospects and donors really stretch to a larger gift. Now, Mark Imony is going to share why he advises his clients to track donor retention.
Thanks, Liz. We're seeing more money coming from fewer donors, and the total number of donors have been decreasing over the last several years. Looking at that Case Insight report, it indicates that the number of donors between 2022 and 2024 has declined by 3.5%. For secondary schools, that number is almost 7%. This makes retaining your donors year over year that much more important. We see demands on increasing our annual fund goals, higher campaign goals, and we can't do that without donor retention. We are not talking about donor participation. This is about donor retention. If you look at the model on the screen, it shows the impact of donor retention on 3 different schools over a 5-year period. If you assume that all schools are acquiring new donors at the same rate, yet School A improves its donor retention by 5% year over year, you can see that it grows much faster than the other 2 schools. Even growing at 3%, School B grows faster than School C, which remains flat on its retention rate. And Liz, if you can go to the next slide for me. So even if you do a great job acquiring new donors every year, you're not going to make as much progress as you would if you focus on retaining the donors that you already have. In this model, we take School C that has a flat retention rate, and they're adding new donors at a rate that's 4% higher than the other 2 schools. You can see that School C still grows at a slower rate than the other 2 schools. They're just trying to fill a leaky bucket, which is not easy to do. So retaining donors year over year is critical to growing your fundraising program.
Thanks, Mark. And yeah, spoiler alert, if anybody's here to hear that our top 10 includes participation rates, that's not going to happen. So sorry if you were looking for that. So thank you, Mark, for highlighting the imperative not to take our current donors for granted, rather to focus on retaining them year over year as a necessary and vital practice to increasing our revenue. Now I'm going to toss the baton back to Lindsay to discuss the importance of monitoring your major gifts prospect pipeline value. Warning, Lindsay arm wrestled the rest of us to talk about this point because she has seen too many clients set goals that are inappropriate compared to their prospect pipeline value. So Lindsay, take us to school.
All right. I don't know that I actually strong-armed everyone, but this team definitely knows how important this data point is to me, and I'm really excited to talk about it with you. I really believe it's an essential foundational tool for developing short and long-term fundraising strategy for your program. When we talk about the prospect pipeline value, we're talking about the total value of donor opportunities. We're looking at the estimated giving potential of families, alumni, grandparents, and friends that this school is cultivating. There are a number of ways to get to that number through various electronic wealth screening tools, analysis, and then ultimately internal review of a pipeline by staff, which will help you determine and or confirm inclination and capacity of your pipeline. The campaign gift chart on your screen illustrates the number of high priority prospects in this school's pipeline. It also illustrates a working fundraising goal that might be possible if they were to close gifts from 1 out of every 3 of their prospective donors. Understanding the giving potential within your pipeline develops confidence in goals and strategic growth. It shows whether annual fund or campaign goals are achievable. And an example might be the board has $150 million in campus facility projects, yet the pipeline in this case indicates $60 million available in philanthropic support. We need to level set and rethink strategy on the role philanthropy can and should play in achieving those master plan goals. It can also help us focus resources. It helps staff and, importantly, your volunteer leaders see what's in play so you can prioritize the most impactful prospects and invest your limited resources in the spaces and places where you're going to see the highest return on investment. The pipeline is the school's future fundraising fuel. A strong pipeline today means stronger fundraising tomorrow.
Thank you, Lindsay, for sharing your wisdom, your passion on this topic. But I will say you're right. All of us feel equally passionate about ratcheting your ambition to your prospect pool and what it's actually capable of. Somebody asked in the Q&A, is this session being recorded? And yes, it is. And everyone will receive a copy of it via email. So speaking of that, those board ambitions, this is rhetorical because we can't actually receive responses from the audience, but audience, have any of you ever had a trustee who gives far below their own capacity ask you why fundraising at your school isn't growing faster? No, we've never had that happen to us either. Leslie Hutchins has been waiting to tell us about the importance of tracking board giving.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, so your board members are leaders in the community. They're a key element of fundraising success, as you know, they need to not only approve your fundraising priorities, they need to make them their personal philanthropic priorities and model that behavior for the rest of your community. Your board members should be ready to speak passionately about the impact of philanthropy and do so from a personal perspective. This is why monitoring your board giving is an important and measurable data point to determine if your board is ready, and therefore if your program is ready for significant fundraising. Your board should have 100% participation in fundraising. I know we weren't going to talk about participation rates, but this is one. They should have 100% participation in your board. But more importantly, they should provide at least 20% of your annual giving. During a campaign, they're going to provide 30 to 40% of your funds committed. If they're not giving at this level, you need to look deeper into the issue. If board members are not ready to say, join me, you need to think about if you have the right people around the table. The sample shown here demonstrates a healthy school where the board is meeting these best practices. If they were lower than the 30 to 40% of fund received and consistently under 100% participation, then some difficult questions would need to be asked. Did you ask them to stretch their giving? Do they not believe or support your priorities? Do they not understand the priorities that they approved or understand the financial model that's needed to achieve these? If they don't support your priorities, then why would others? In contrast, board giving the majority of your fund receives is also a concern. If this is happening, you need to strengthen the culture of philanthropy in the rest of your community. It's a signal that you have become too reliant on a small handful of insiders as your donors. The rest of the community needs to understand that their support is both important and it's needed. So the reason I have board giving on my top 10 is because it's a data point that gives you a clue into the overall health of your fundraising program.
Thank you, Leslie. And I will put a plug in now for an upcoming article that Lindsay will be posting on LinkedIn in the coming week about why directors of advancement should be in and how to get yourself in, if you are not currently, governance and nominating discussions about potential new trustees. So look for that article to be released on LinkedIn soon. So we're going to go right back to Leslie for our next topic. Speaking of upgrading board member giving, Mark spoke earlier about the importance of focusing on donor retention, and now Leslie is going to share her advice about monitoring donor upgrades.
So as Liz mentioned, Mark did discuss in our point 3 the importance and the power of donor retention. Inspiring a habit of giving is important, but unless you're getting donor upgrades, your program could still remain static in dollars raised. And that is the important goal at the end of the year. In this sample chart of annual giving by gift level, you can see that this school has done a fairly good job of retaining and acquiring donors, and they grew their dollars. But they did this at the expense of increasing donors at the top of their pyramid. The impact of increasing donors at that 10,000 to 24,999, even back to the levels in this sample where the school was a few years before, would make a tremendous impact on the total dollars raised. I want to point out that in this sample shown that the year that they raised the most was not the year they had the most dollars, but the year that they had the most donors in the 10,000 to 24,999 gift band. Liz mentioned in reference to Christy's comments about yield rates that if you're seeing 65% or higher in your yield rates, you might benefit from thinking about doing your asks with a little bit of a bolder view. Liz, if you could switch, thanks. To ensure you are continuously striving to increase these donors, use a gift table for both your major and your annual giving programs. Often, this practice is overlooked in annual giving programs, but you do have to remember that a strong annual giving program is run like a small campaign. You need to determine how many gifts you need at each level, and then the important part, set target ask amounts for your prospects to achieve that goal. Lindsay identified in her table using a 3-to-1 ratio, 3 prospects to turn to 1 gift, which is something to think about what your ratio is for this. Identify the people you need and then make a solicitation plan for them. By taking these steps, it will keep you honest and, most importantly, accountable all year to the pipeline activity needed to secure those important gifts and those upgrades.
Thank you, Leslie. And before we move on, I do want to underscore again that upgrading donors, tracking yield rates, and so on relies on setting personalized ask amounts, a practice that we see too infrequently among our clients and schools more generally. It also requires articulating a strong case for support. Why are you asking for more this year? Why are you asking for more support than last year? And if you're talking about, well, because our budget's bigger and the hole to fill is bigger, that's probably not going to be very compelling. So make sure you have a strong case to back it up. Now it's back to Christy, who is a former director of advancement services, accustomed to managing up a group of frontline fundraisers, and she is going to discuss the importance of tracking pipeline activity. Take it away, Christy.
Thanks again, Liz. Your school CRM is more than a system for recording just gifts and pledges. It's a strategic investment for each of your schools designed to drive fundraising performance. How? By tracking pipeline activities. A fully utilized CRM empowers full advancement teams to capture the complete journey of each donor. It supports the movement of prospects from qualification to cultivation and ultimately to solicitation. This involves tracking not only the outcomes, but also all the related activities and metrics, ensuring a comprehensive view of engagement and progress. These pipeline activities in your CRM include solicitor assignments to track timing and progress, measure eventual yield, and ensure accountability. Opportunities or proposals to define giving potential and timing linking them directly to your donor strategy. All donor actions, interactions, and even attempts. This includes emails, calls, touches, and leadership event invitations. But most importantly, contact reports. After each meaningful interaction, major gift officers and school leaders need to document a comprehensive contact report that includes all outcomes, the donor's interests, any relevant family updates, their declared feelings towards the school, and clearly defined next steps. These reports are essential for shaping strategy and advancing the relationship towards solicitation. Without them, valuable context is lost. And we all know if it's not documented, it didn't happen. Pipeline activities play a vital role in advancing donor relationships. They provide clear visibility into next steps. They ensure alignment with campaign timelines, and they also enable efficient data-driven reporting for both your leadership and your board. By capturing both the effort and outcomes of gift officers, pipeline activity tracks valuable insights into performance, which helps determine when portfolio adjustments need to be made and ensures that your team's resources are focused where they will have the greatest impact. Pipeline activities are essential for leadership visibility, especially since chief advancement officers and directors, you can't personally meet and qualify every donor. You need to rely on consistent documentation and reporting to understand how and when prospects are moving through portfolios to make informed and strategic decisions. In short, tracking pipeline activity transforms your CRM into a performance engine, fueling strategy, powering accountability, and enabling more accurate forecasting to strengthen donor relationships at every stage.
Thank you, Christy. And when I was a frontliner, I always submitted my contact report on time. Yeah. I also want to point out that Christy and I have recently posted on LinkedIn a pair of articles about pipeline activity and tracking it. So I posted an article about major gifts metrics for independent school fundraising programs that you may want to check out. And Christy posted sort of a parallel or corollary article about the importance of the advancement services role in supporting frontline fundraisers and tracking major gifts metrics and pipeline activity. So I urge you to check those out. Okay, so now I'm going to pitch things back to Lindsay, who kicked us off today talking about funds received and now is going to talk with us about new funds committed. Lindsay.
Thanks, Liz. So we talked about funds received being today's resources, and new funds committed are tomorrow's resources. They're fueling your pipeline for future investment. So when we talk about new funds committed, we're talking about funds that are representative of the total amount of commitments received in a given fiscal year. That's new cash, so outright gifts made during the fiscal year, and new pledges, which are unconditional pledges made during the fiscal year but still outstanding. NFC does not include pledge amounts paid during the fiscal year or government support. In case reporting, NFC also includes bequest intentions for donors age 65 plus. However, as Mark will share more with you in a moment, we encourage you to track new planned gift commitments separately. So why should we track new funds committed? It can show momentum. Measuring campaign and appeals progress by commitment can show and illustrate fundraising success. It enables us to do multi-year planning. So pledges can give us, and really importantly, school leadership, your board and your head and others, the confidence to launch and sustain initiatives. When I think of an example, a shovel in the ground policy in a capital campaign comes to mind. Your board has determined that before breaking ground on a new academic building, that the school need to have a minimum of 80% of pledges in hand. By tracking new funds committed, you and your team will know when you've reached that threshold. Coupled with funds received, you'll be able to precisely track the additional threshold of cash in hand to start construction of a new building. And as we think further about reporting for boards and leadership, tracking new funds committed can demonstrate sustainability beyond current year giving for your campus leaders. Similar to the opportunities I shared in funds received tracking, this data can be important to donor cultivation and stewardship as well. Multi-year commitments signal deep trust in an organization, and they require very strong stewardship, which can strengthen donor relationships. It can also build pride and confidence in philanthropic investment of your school. And last, but certainly not least, it represents tomorrow's resources, helping us fuel bold visions and illustrate long-term stability for the school.
Thank you, Lindsay. And as Lindsay just mentioned, we do recommend that new planned gift commitments are good to track separately and important for long-term success. And I'm going to pitch things back to Mark to share why.
Thanks, Liz. Yeah, planned giving is about your future of your school. We know that there's a generational wealth transfer happening, and it's in your school's best interest to make sure you capture some of that wealth. Planned gifts typically come more from people's assets than from cash. So it means people can sometimes make a greater gift than they ever thought they were possible. Going back to that case insight data, you can see in this chart that the total revocable bequests account for 6.6% of new funds committed, or approximately 185 million in 2024. So the question becomes, why are you not paying more attention to planned giving? So we hear a number of excuses and myths around planned giving, and here are a couple of the top ones. First, that planned giving is only for old people. We know that the average age of a first will is 44. So if you're waiting until someone's approaching their 50th reunion or past their 50th reunion to begin to have the planned giving conversation, you're really missing an opportunity. Others feel like planned giving is just too complicated. I don't have any background in estate planning. I'm not a lawyer. How can I talk about planned giving? You don't need to be an expert. You just have to have a basic understanding of these vehicles as a tool. Most of our donors are sophisticated. They have attorneys and accountants that will help them with their estate planning. And all you need to be able to do is plant the seed with them so that they can go back to those advisors and ask that question. The majority of planned gifts that our schools receive are simple bequests or just named beneficiaries, so they're not that complex. Plan giving should be a part of all of your major gift activities, and it should be an integral part of your stewardship plan. If you're not actively paying attention to your plan giving program, you're missing a key opportunity and potentially leaving money on the table.
Thank you, Mark. And I hope that each one of our attendees, as all of us have benefited from the joy of receiving a surprise bequest at your school. And I hope that when that happened, you picked up the phone, called the gift officer who years or decades ago secured that planned gift, and thanked them. So you want to keep that behavior going. And I think of plan giving as paying it forward to the fundraisers who will follow in your footsteps after you at your institution. And you don't want to be the person that dropped the ball and didn't continue to secure plan gifts. And if you measure it, it will get done, right? If you measure it, then people will commit to doing it. So don't be that guy, the guy that drops the plan giving ball. Finally, we're going to wrap our top 10 with Leslie, who is going to address the sometimes controversial but important cost per dollar raised. This is one of those data points that we see trustees, heads, and our little friends, the CFOs, most interested in. And we often see them ask this question in terms of what's the ROI on our fundraising program? I emphasize that you should always remember you are a revenue producing office, right? But your ability to answer the question, what are we spending to raise the money that we are and what's our cost per dollar raised, is vital to your success as a program and to your leadership as an advancement professional. So over to you, Leslie.
Thanks, Liz. So cost per dollar raise is not a data point to check daily, but it is important to monitor year over year for trends. It's a data point to help you identify what other data you need to be looking at more closely in your program. So let's start first. To calculate your cost per dollar raised, you take your total expenditures, which includes your salary and your benefits, and divide by your total funds received. A high-performing school spends in the range of 17 to 22 cents per dollar raise. If your school is outside of this range in either direction, you need to look at your program more closely. If your cost per dollar raised is below the average, as sample school number 1 shows in the first few years, it does not mean that you're running a more efficient program. What it does mean is that you're probably underspending on your program. You should ask, are you properly spending on the resources that you need for a successful program, to include staffing? Using other data points, such as the value of your pipeline, as Lindsay discussed. Do you have the proper staff in place to reach your prospect pool's potential? Do you have enough frontline fundraisers for the number of prospects you've identified? Your head of school, CFO, and the board, they want to know your ROI. If you want a budget increase to support new staff or new programs, this provides you some of that data. In that same sample of school number 1, you can see that this school was paying attention to this data point and did course correct to invest more in their program. Now, if I were the school, I would overlay this data point to one that Lindsay talked about, total funds received, and confirm that dollars raised per year started to increase as well as you're monitoring those year over year trend lines. If your cost per dollar raised is above the average, as is the example in school number 2, you need to evaluate what is working and what is not working in your program and find places that you can make adjustments. In advancement offices, at the end of the day, we are all fundraisers, including engagement officers. Everybody should run their programs keeping in mind the question, how will this increase our dollars raised? So what I like about tracking the cost per dollar raise is it's another one of these data points, as board giving was, that gives you a clue about what else you should be paying attention to and what questions you need to be asking yourself. It's another data point that helps evaluate the overall health of your program.
Thank you, Leslie, for bringing it home. And we are going to move to some questions because we do have a little bit of time left. So again, if you have a question to ask about anything that we've talked about or any other topic, we invite you to enter a question in the Q&A by using the Q&A button. As I hope you can tell, our Independent Schools Practice is passionate about analyzing past and current data to guide future behaviors that we know will lead to fundraising success. These 10 data points that we have reviewed today are not the only ones, right? These we say are the most important ones, probably. I mean, maybe we should do this webinar again in a year and see if our opinions have changed at all. But we know that these are among the most important to monitor. But we also want to encourage all of you, in a field, independent schools or fundraising, where there is never enough time, and in independent schools where there's infrequently sufficient budget and staffing. We also want you to stop obsessing about the data that doesn't matter, and to help your board members and sometimes your head of school understand that you're going to focus on the things that really drive success and that will help you accelerate philanthropic revenue rather than chasing participation rates of faculty and staff and other things that don't actually pay the bills. So we give you that permission, and hope you'll take our permission. Now, we do have time for a couple of audience questions from the Q&A. And let's see. Okay, let me move over to that. So first one, when you calculate your cost per dollar raised, do you include all funds received? It seems like one big gift could really skew your rate. What a smart question. Leslie, do you want to answer that?
Sure. So you do calculate all of it, and you do see those trends where in years a big gift does skew it. And in schools, I would assume in the school one sample that I gave you where it's very low, there are some large gifts from donors that are causing it to go way down, which indicates also in cases like that of the underspending on some programs because that was a gift that came in that wasn't dependent on programming. But also in this, remember that you are also including in your costs the salaries and benefits too. So it does average out there with you want all your funds in there, but you want all your expenses too.
And sometimes we see a school receive a particularly large bequest in a particular year, and certainly that is going to throw cost per dollar rate. It's going to look like suddenly the program got more efficient. But one thing that I want to emphasize is also, and we find ourselves saying this to your CFO friends frequently, you cannot save your way to fundraising success, right? Your cost per dollar raised is only going to get into that 17 to 22 cent range if it's larger than that by raising more money. The idea is not to cut staff. The idea is to run a more efficient and effective program where you are more intentional about major gift solicitations and securing large support year over year over year, whether you are in a campaign or not.
And if I could add one more thing to that, is it's also a year over year trend. So if you have a large gift in a year, it might show a spike or a change in a year. But you also want to look at this one on a year over year view of it.
Absolutely. And Mark, you had a comment?
I was just going to add that in that conversation, a lot of times it takes a mindset shift of the board to be thinking about investment instead of expense. A lot of times boards will look at it as an expense rather than an investment, and creating that shift in the board's perception is one way to have that conversation be more productive.
Absolutely. Another reason that directors of advancement need to be in those nominating and governance conversations, right? Okay, so another question in the Q&A. Do we recommend utilizing ask strings in our annual fund appeals or simply using one ask amount? Mark, may I call on you for that?
Sure. The array fundraising is always an interesting approach. You put a number of dollar amounts down, and people will usually pick the lesser of the amounts. So I think especially at the top of the pyramid, really focusing on a specific amount and getting the donor to react to that specific amount is the better way to go, especially at the top of the pyramid. Down lower into the pyramid, if you want to use some options, sometimes that's helpful, but being really specific is the most effective way to get to that gift.
I agree wholeheartedly. Our next question, with respect to board giving, how can you take into consideration religious members who do not have capacity? Do you still try to utilize them to promote giving and support, or rely on lay members? So I'm going to pitch this to myself. Having worked at a couple of schools where I had religious members on the board. I once had a nun tell me, Liz, when I see you coming, I reach for my handbag. Not exactly the effect I wanted to have on her, but it was good. She understood my role at the school. So I think it's a balance, right? We cannot expect religious members of our boards, whether they be Catholic nuns or priests or Quaker, members from a Quaker meeting or so on and so forth. We can't expect them to prioritize giving if that is not the circumstance under which they were recruited to the board and asked to serve on your board. With that being said, then it becomes more incumbent on the rest of your board members to supply the revenue that your school needs. And one thing that I think we often we have to urge board members to understand is that boards at independent schools often are constituted with skills in mind, and philanthropy is a skill. There are people in your constituency who are philanthropic and very good at governance. So ask them to be on your board and make it known to them. Part of the reason we are asking you to be on our board is because we want you to be extraordinarily philanthropic to our school. And I think being forthright with potential board members in the recruitment process is imperative, not to surprise people with that and not to ask hugely capable people onto your board, even if they have never demonstrated philanthropic interest. We also sadly see too much of that. Oh, well, we were hoping because they're a billionaire that they would give a lot to our school. Well, hope is not a strategy. So please abandon that hope. Mark, did you want to answer that as well? No.
No.
Okay. So we have, here comes another one. What are the best practices for managing participation requests as major gifts are also being pursued? For us, current parent participation is still a number that our board likes to see. I'm going to call on Lindsay for this.
I mean, I'm going to have the very unpopular opinion once again that participation does not pay your bills. And I think it foundationally is starting with education with your board about why you should be paying attention to that or not. Closing 2 6-figure major gifts in a fiscal year, oftentimes for some schools will be double the amount of their annual fund. So, I think it just goes back to that education in the long run. Obviously, if that's a data point that they're used to seeing, maybe ease them out of that. Start showing them some of these data points that we shared with you today that are those long-term strategic investments in fundraising and outcomes in fundraising that at the end of the day are going to mean more to the board and to the long-term sustainability and success of the school.
I would also add that stop playing into this yourselves. So back when I got into fundraising, it was a standard part of every board dashboard. Here are our participation rates and all of these constituencies. Stop feeding them that information and they will stop caring about it, right? So please don't create your own problem by reporting to them things that you know are not important, and start educating them about what is important, as Lindsay said.
Liz, I just jump in on that one and just say it's participation is not a number you want to operationalize. Like if you want to celebrate it because you have a great number and people get excited about it, fine, but don't build your program trying to achieve a certain number. It's just not effective as an operational tool.
Christy, I'm going to have you answer this next one. We have this delights me. Oh, I'm sure it's not a question only from this person at this school. I'm sure others have this problem. We have a board member who believes we need to spend way more time marketing and targeting different age brackets on social media as a main fundraising strategy. Insert, instead of social media, alumni engagement events. Hey, everybody gets an Apple Teeny. With a small team, we've been focusing more on major gifts. What should we be doing here? It feels like best case scenario is a lot of participation, getting young alumni giving, but maybe I'm looking at this wrong. Christy, what would advice be?
I don't believe you're looking at it wrong. I think it is truly engaging a wonderful audience, and you can build rapport and engagement with all audiences. But the main target is to engage, get them back on campus, get to regional events, get in front of them, and build rapport. And build the first gift to donor upgrades, and then increase their giving to eventually maybe become a major gift.
Yeah, focus on the major gifts. It's great to engage. It's great to, but if you have to choose between those two things, focus on the major gifts. Absolutely. And you can quote us on that. Okay, any other questions? We've answered all the questions in the Q&A, but I'll allow a few seconds in case anybody else wants to chime in. All right. Oh, thank you. Good. Thank you for the thank you. Okay, well, we will wrap there. For those who would like to connect with us via email or via LinkedIn, here is our contact information. As I mentioned at the top of our webinar, yes, this was recorded and will be distributed to all of you. It will also be distributed to anybody who registered but did not attend. And I suspect that we may share it on our LinkedIn and other things as well. Thank you for the thank yous that we're seeing in the Q&As. And it was great to host all of you today. Thank you to my colleagues. I'm sure you appreciate, all of our audience appreciates the awesome team that you are. And thank you for joining me on this. And we wish all of you attendees much success in the year ahead. And thanks for joining us. Bye now.